Alright. Islam Morris, Islam. How we doing today? This is video 2, part 2 of my video series. I'm gonna start producing on a regular basis here. My name is Malik Wali El Bey. Formerly Brandon Prophet El Bey. A lot of people know me as Brandon Prophet El Bey. I used to be called Brandon Prophet when I was younger. Elementary school, middle school, high school, a little bit of college. And I changed my name to Malik Wali El Bey. This is a informative video where I will begin to talk about all of the things that something will be personal about some personal experiences I may have went through, but most of it is 100% educational and informative. And this video is for all people who, how can I say it? This video is for all people who are interested in knowing the fundamental truths of themselves, fundamental truths of the universe, fundamental truths of nature, and those who are seeking to understand the truth of themselves. I welcome any and all people who are conscious beings who are willing to open their mind up and to learn about themselves, human history, the science of nature, science of the universe, and have a deeper and more fundamental understanding of themselves. This is what this video is for. Everybody has my permission to look at it and to use it however they choose to. Because I want to make sure I get that out first and foremost. Peace and love, peace and love. Okay? Now when I share this information, the information that I'm going to share with you today, and that I will continue to share, is not based on emotion, is not based on opinion, alright? It's based on truth, it's based on science, it's based on research that I have done. You might see a few of the books behind me, alright? It's based on research that I've done and what other people have found when they have done research. I'm here to share the information. It doesn't do me any good to just sit on it and to be able to use it for myself. Alright? Alright? It makes more sense for me to have this information and to begin to share it with others. It's important that everybody else has this information, not just myself. Okay? Because my responsibility is to make sure that I share this information with my brothers and sisters at all times. Alright, that's my role, that's my purpose, and that's what this video is instructed for. Now, throughout this video and all my video series, you're going to hear me say the term Islam a lot. I want to go into that briefly. Each video will be approximately 30 minutes. Thus, I won't be able to get into anything in great detail per video, but as the videos proceed, I'll get more and more in detail, little by little by little. Alright. Islam is a creed, not a religion. Islam stands for I, self, law, am, master. Alright. It says that I recognize the law within myself, I recognize my own master, and I also recognize that each other individual is their own law and is their own master. So I'm recognizing myself and I'm recognizing others. And it is important for me to do that. So when I say that term, I say it for the purpose of understanding that I'm speaking from a spiritual perspective, not a physical perspective. Because no emotion in that is a way for me to understand that I'm here for a purpose, to carry out my role, to share this truth to my brothers and sisters from a spiritual and scientific point of view, not from a emotional point of view. Islam? Alright, so we're gonna get right into it here. First thing I would like to start off by saying, look, that 7 universal, how we created ourselves, how we got here. Okay. It's very important to understand how we got here. Alright. The 7 universal laws, the 7 universal principles, and the 7 transformation stages of how we created ourselves. I know there are some of us that are looking to understand and figure out, well, how do we get in? What happens when we make transition and come back? What's beyond? And I'm here to explain it. Okay. The truth is, we all understand that the body is a tool, it's a vehicle, it's an avatar. We are not the body. We operate the body, we function the body, we use the body. But we are not the body. We understand that our mind is a tool too. We can use it. Thoughts are tools. Our words, our actions, lights and sounds, these are all tools that we use to express ourselves, to understand ourselves, and to communicate with ourselves, to communicate with each other. Okay. But we are not these tools. We are consciousness, we are intelligence. Alright? And as consciousness itself, as intelligence itself, as spirit itself. Okay, we manifest, we transformed ourselves into the flesh. Okay, so we can be able to function and navigate on this plane that we have created for ourselves to navigate within. Okay, there are many planes, alright, but this is the plane that we have been occupying for a very long time. Okay. This plane and us are one. You can't separate. This plane has no age, this plane has no date. Like I said in the previous video, this is not a world, this is a plane. Alright? Length, angle, and width. Alright? Thus, this is a plane. And the sun and the moon and the stars are within this plane. Alright, the sun is not 90 billion miles away or whatever it is, 94 billion miles away or whatever they say. And there is no such thing as outer space or any of that other stuff. That stuff does not exist. Okay. This is inner space. Everything exists within this bubble, like a snow globe. Okay? We live inside of a snow globe. And there's an electromagnetic field that encapsulates us. And the sun and moon and stars are within this field, not outside of it. Okay. Outside of this globe is the bare elements, oxygen itself, energy itself. It has not condensed itself yet. So this plane pulls everything together. Electricity and magnetism pulls everything together and holds it together. So we can function and navigate with it. Okay. But there's nothing outside of it. Now you can jump from plane to plane to plane, but you have to understand the science of how to create your own wormhole, create your own destination, and then travel through it. Okay? And then travel back. All of this knowledge is not new. It's just not being used by us right now. Some of us are using it through meditation and stuff like that. Astral travel, that's very true. I've done that too. But as far as physically traveling, we have not done that in quite some time. Thus, the 7 transformation stages are consciousness. Consciousness is to be aware. So consciousness states that everything is conscious of itself and as itself. Everything is aware of itself and as itself. That's what we are. The breath is a tool that we use. We can breathe slow, or we can breathe fast. But it's a tool. It's not what we are, it's a tool. Okay? We are a spirit expressing itself through the flesh. Everything is conscious. The plants is conscious, the grass is conscious. Alright, the earth is conscious. Everyone's conscious of themselves and as themselves. They know what they are, and they are aware of the fact that they are experiencing themselves through this form. They are not the form, they're aware that they're experiencing themselves through the form. Okay? And from consciousness, we transform ourselves into thought. Thought is the ability to call upon oneself. Alright? Thought is spoken word. In the beginning, there was the word. That's what thought is. Okay? From thought, then we transform ourselves into light. Light is the ability to see yourself. From light, then we transform ourselves into sound. Sound is the ability to hear yourself. Okay? From sound, then we transform ourselves into shapes. Shapes is the ability to take form. Alright? There's only one shape in the universe, and that's the circle. That's the only shape in the universe, that's the circle. Alright? And then from the circle, then you get the square and the triangle when you understand how to segment that circle. Okay? And then from the shapes, then we have atoms. Atoms is the building block of everything. Alright? Atoms is energy condensed, vibrating at a very high rate. Proton, electron, neutron. Positive force, or the electric force, the magnetic force, and the neutral force. Alright? And from atoms, then we move to elements. Elements is the ability to create infinite versions of oneself. Atoms is to create oneself, and elements is the ability to create infinite versions of oneself. There's only one element, and that's hydrogen. And as hydrogen doubles, you get helium, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and all the others. Alright? Then from elements, then we get matter. Matter is the earth. Earth is iron. Alright? Air is oxygen. Fire is carbon. Water is hydrogen and oxygen. Okay? So when you look at water, you're looking at the first element, that's hydrogen. But you also have oxygen that is in the atmosphere. Hydrogen and oxygen come together, you get water. Alright, and then from matter you transition. It's a complete circle. You gotta go complete the circle. And then from atom you go back to consciousness once again. Okay. Thus, in essence, we are in the universe, and we are also, the universe is also within us. They're doing both at the same time. Alright, so it's very important to understand this. Alright? Remember, this stuff is not being taught in school. You got elementary school, but they don't teach you about the elements. Middle school, high school, probably they don't teach you about what you need to know. This is what you need to know. Okay? The basic. Then from the 7 transformation stages, then we have the 7 universal laws. These universal laws are simple. Universal laws are consciousness is again. Everything is conscious of itself and has itself. That's a law. Alright, laws don't change. Laws are laws. Laws have always been and will always be. So we have consciousness. And consciousness, and we have correspondence. Everything corresponds with everything else. Everything doesn't react to everything else. Everything corresponds to everything else. Basically, corresponding means interacts with everything else. Everything is connected. Everything is interacting with everything else at all times. I'm interacting with the air and the atmosphere by breathing it. I'm interacting with the earth by standing on it. Because I'm interacting with the plane at all times. Alright, everything is in constant interaction. Alright. Then from correspondence, then we have cause and effect. Alright. That's what we call karma. Cause and effect. Not good or bad, not right or wrong. Cause and effect. Cause and effect states, well, whatever we project out always returns back. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be a thought, an intention, a word, a sound, an image. If you throw it out there, you gotta come back like a boomerang. It's cause and effect. Alright? That's whatever we do will be done to us. That's how it's designed to be. Alright? Justice is built within. No one gets away with anything. That's why I don't have to do nothing to nobody. Nature's gonna do it. Okay? So it's very important to understand these basic fundamental truths. Okay, my family? Alright, then from cause and effect, then we get polarity. Polarity states that the duality of the one. Alright, you got electricity, you got magnetism. Electricity sends out the signal, magnetism draws in the signal. Electricity is the masculine principle. Magnetism is the woman, feminine principle. And from that we have day and night. Daytime is the sun, electric. Nighttime is the moon, magnetic. Okay? Hot and cold, wet and dry. The duality of the one. And from that, then we have rhythm. Everything is in a constant state of synchronicity. Everything is in synchronicity with everything else. Every thought, every word, every image, every sound, every action, every movement is constantly in synchronicity with everything else. That's Then we have vibration. The law of vibration. Everything is always in motion. Nothing is still. Nothing is ever still. Everything is always moving. Alright, move fast or move slow, but everything is always in a state of motion. The rocks, whether it's animate, like the humans, animals, and plants, or inanimate, like the rocks and the minerals, right? But everything is always in a state of motion. And then from vibration, then we have the law of oneness. The one is the many and the many is the one. Everything exists within everything else. Thus, it's very important to understand that I exist within every human, animal, and plant and mineral. And every human, animal, plant, and mineral exists within me. Alright? At all times. Alright? These are laws. These don't change. And from these laws, then we go into the principles. These principles are how we treat each other. This is what our government constitutes principles. Alright? So when you talk about government, you're talking about principles. Treat everybody fair, equality. That's a principle. It's not a law, it's a principle. Alright? When you're talking about these principles, these are 7 principles. These principles are love. Everyone has unconditional love for everyone else. It doesn't matter what they do, where they're from. Unconditional love. That's number 1. Alright, then from love, then we have truth. Okay? truth. Everyone is the truth. Everyone speaks their own truth. Alright? Always have, always will. Everyone's thoughts, words, and actions are naturally aligned with a fundamental truth. That's true. And from truth, then we have peace. Peace is, everyone is in the natural state of peace, harmony, relaxation at all times. That's peace. Alright? Then we have free will. Everyone has free will to think, say, and do whatever they want, however they want. Okay? Without the permission of anybody. I don't need permission to think, to speak, or to act. That's free will. Thus we have the free will to follow the principle, or free will not to follow the principle. You don't have to do anything. Alright? It's very important to understand it. And that's what makes this experience so beautiful. Very beautiful. And from free will, then we have justice. Whatever we do to ourselves. That's justice. Because we're all connected. The one is the many, and the many is the one. Thus, everyone created their own experience and their own situation for themselves. That's justice. Okay? And then from justice, then we have equality. Everyone's equal. There is no such thing as better than, or older than, or younger than, or smarter than, or wiser than. These things do not exist. Alright? There is one principle. That's equality. We're all equal. We all start on the same page. Always have, always will. Okay? Won't ever change. Alright? There's no better than, there's no older than, there's no smarter than. There's equality. And we all choose to use our gifts and our abilities in different ways. We're all designed to use our energy in various ways. There is no such thing as smarter than. We're all equally as smart. That's why they call it intelligence. Intelligence is the knowledge that we are all manifest with. Some people call it born. I like to say manifest with. It's the intel that's in your genes. It's the knowledge that is encoded within your genes. That's what they call it, intelligence. Alright? The knowledge that you have in your genes that it has to be revealed as we travel amongst this journey. Okay. And then from that, then we have balance. Everything is always in a state of balance. This plane is always in a state of balance. Always. Okay? Always will be. Okay? So it's very important to understand the energy. And balance, this plane is not ever out of balance. What gets out of balance is the humans. Because some of the animals, they may step outside these laws and principles from time to time. Principles can't step outside the law. They might step outside these principles from time to time. But the plane is always in balance. There's nothing wrong with the earth. Alright? There's nothing wrong with the atmosphere. Alright? It's doing just fine. Alright? Now, understanding these laws, these principles, these stages, then you can understand, you can navigate now. Now you can understand that there is no such thing as gender. There is no such thing as time. We're all androgynous, male and female. So there is no gender. Time is a concept that we have created that charts the movement of the sun and movement of the stars throughout the sky. It is really a concept. There really is no time. past, present, and future are concepts. It all exists simultaneously. Because everyone who's always is here now has always been here. Alright, just in a different form. And everyone's on a continuous journey. When we're doing the NIF stage, we'll set us up for the next stage, and set us up for the next stage, and set us up for the next stage. Alright? That's how it's designed to be. It's very important to understand that. Okay? There is no good or bad, there is no right or wrong. There is no Satan and Jesus or evil and what they call it. If you go to the church, especially the Christian church, Catholic church, talk about Jesus and heaven and hell and good or bad. These things don't exist. Alright, it's the duality that we called before, the polarity of the one, duality of self. Alright. You understand that this is a very peaceful existence. This is a dream. And in this dream, you create from it what you want to create from it. It is what you say it is in this dream. That's how it's designed to be. Islam. So once you understand that this is a dream, whatever you create for it to be, that's what it's going to be. If you say it is, then it's true. If you say it isn't, then that's also true. Alright? So it's very important to understand that. How we use it. Some of us are using our energy to be very peaceful, loving, uplifting, and beneficial. That's myself. And some of us are not using our energy to be very peaceful, uplifting. Some of us are using this energy that we are all using, that we are all connected with, and using it to promote sex or drugs or fighting or conflict, things of that sort. Emotions. That's all how we use it. Alright? But there's only one energy. Okay? There's no such thing as good magic, bad magic, black magic, white magic. It doesn't exist. It's energy. And how we all choose to use this energy, this is up to each individual. That's all. And now that I have touched on the transformation stage, 7 universal laws, 7 universal principles, then I can go in on touching on how, because a lot of people say, well, how did we get in the situation we are in now? How did the Moors, falsely called Africans and Indians and Negroes and black folks, we are none of those things. We are not black. No matter how many times people may say it every day, it don't ever make it true. A lie don't become the truth. Okay. How do we get in this situation? How did the European brothers and sisters get in the situation they in? Whether they like it, being in a position of government and authority, or they don't like it and they're in a position of servitude and they're always working and, they're being, what I'm saying, taken advantage of. You understand what I'm saying? Alright? So that's what a lot of people are saying now. They're like, well, how did they get in this situation? That's what a lot of people are saying. My video kind of skips, so I'll just edit that, as we go. But a lot of people are saying this now. They're like, well, how did we get in this situation? How did this happen? Whether they like it or they don't like it. And I would like to go in on that and touch in on that, whether it be on this video or the next video. Okay, briefly summarize it, and then after I do the whole summary, then we can go in and take each part and look at it individually and go through details step by step by step by step. Alright? And that's what we plan on doing here. Alright? So, see my camera starting to pause a little bit. So, they said, how did European brothers get into this? Well, you gotta understand one thing. Okay? You gotta understand one thing. Okay? That's what we say. When we manifested into the flesh, we manifested as one family. Not 2 families, not 3 families, not 5 families, not 10 families. Alright? One family. And when we manifested as this family, we're all more. All of us are more. Alright? Not Negroes, not aliens, we are all more. 100% through and through. Okay? And we occupy certain places of the planet. They call it the North Pole at first. Then from the North Pole, then we move to the Pacific Ocean, because that's where, you get the most sunlight. Scientific, they call China the land of the rising sun, and they call California the place of the setting sun. So right in the middle, you get like Alaska, you have daylight there from 24 hours to 18 hours or something like that. So we chose that region, continent of Mu, as the location. Okay. All right. Islam family. Islam. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, when we was at the continent of Mu, we chose to go to the continent of Mu from the land from the North Pole. Alright, we was all in the North Pole, or the center of the earth. Okay? The center of the earth was the North Pole, and as we got from the center of the earth, we chose to go to the continent of Mu. Okay? Which was in between North America and South America. North America and Asia. Okay, where Hawaii is. Hawaii is a remnant of the continent of Mu. And when we chose to go there, that was the place of location, and that was our headquarters. Alright, and then from there, those headquarters, then we ventured out, and then we ventured out to North and South America, and then to Asia, Australia. And then eventually from there, then we got into Africa and Europe. Okay? And what happened was, after the the earthquakes and the floods, that took place, there were many earthquakes and many floods. Atlantis was not just one, Mu was not just another, there's been multiple. Okay? And after those took place, that's when they had a mass migration, and that's when we went from the Western Hemisphere to the Eastern Hemisphere, and that's where everybody gets their stories about them migrating into what you call Mesopotamia, or migrating into what you call Africa, or migrating into what they call Al-Kebalan or Europe. Okay, they didn't start there. None of our brothers and sisters started in Europe. Okay, or in Mesopotamia, or in Africa. We all started here in America and on the Pacific island of Mu, Easter Island, Hawaii. That's where we all started. Okay. And then what happened was, after this mass migration, because of the submersion that took place, our brothers and sisters, the more brothers and sisters who got submerged, we wanted to bring them back. Okay. But we knew we couldn't bring them back physically because we were vibrating at 2 different vibrations. You see what I'm saying? I'm in harmony and balance and at peace. So I can only manifest through me someone who's of the same yin vibration or similar yin vibration, similar karmic vibration. It has to be similar. Okay? Without that, like someone whose karma has been doing is not aligned with my karma, they cannot manifest through me. Alright? It doesn't work like that. So because of that, that's when we did our experimentation to rebalance out the plane. Experimentation that we did with, how can I say? The experimentation that we did with mixing our DNA with the chimpanzee's DNA. Okay, and when we did that, and that gave rise, that mixture is what we now call our European brothers and sisters. Okay, and that the as you could say, the genetic experiments happened in Mexico, according to the stories and the research that I was told. Right. And then from there, then they was transported to Brazil, or you call it Amazon. Okay, that's where you get the story of Tarzan, Patagonia, right? It was hot down there. And then from there, then it was transported, but since it was hot, it was perfect for the experimentation because it was hot. It's hot is the perfect condition for life. Life really doesn't breed in cold water and cold climates. I mean, some does, but the majority of it, you need water and you need heat. Okay, so it was the perfect place for the experimentation. Okay, and it's just that when they got to a certain stage of evolution, we saw how the sun reacted to their skin, and after we saw how the sun reacted to their skin, we were like, oh, okay, no, we get it now. You know what I'm saying? We were like, oh, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. You know what I'm saying? We recognized they couldn't stay there. So because they could not stay there, they were like, all right, cool. We're going to transport our brothers to a cloudier climate where they can evolve. Okay? And that cloudier climate was Europe, what you call Turkey, or Greece, or Italy. Alright, the Caucasus Mountains. That's where we transported our European brothers and sisters, and that's where they evolved there. Alright, and when they got to another stage of evolution, when they were ready to be reincorporated back into society, then it was up to the Moors there in Europe and in Africa to reincorporate them back into the family. Okay. Now what happened was, as the Europeans began to be reincorporated back into society, okay, you gotta understand that the European sisters was primarily being used to mix in with the Moors, right? Because there were no European men at the time, and the European men that were there, they wasn't really, really focused on that at the time. It wasn't a priority, okay? And so they were primarily they're primarily to bring back into the corporation was to mix back in with the Moorish men. Okay, and the European men there got reincorporated back into society as workers. They need to learn how to build. Like they used to learn how to build the ships, learn how to build houses, learn how to garden, things like that. They had to learn how to do these activities. That's how they got brought in, through the military. And through the military, they rose up to the ranks like Julius Caesar. Before that, it was Alexander the Great, right? Alexander the Great. And what they were doing was they was trying to enter back into the worldwide commerce and trade. They were trying to enter back into it on terms that were suitable and beneficial to themselves. And what began to happen was the Moors and Africa and the Moors in Europe did not necessarily agree with that. Like the Assyrians, you call it Assyrians, and Hannibal Bay, the descendants of, not Hannibal, but the descendants of, you call my brother in Saudi Arabia, Hammurabi Bay, the descendants of them, Nebuchadnezzar, right? They all was like they're the Assyrians, and they didn't really agree with that. So that's when Alexander the Great had conflicts to work their way into the business of commerce and trade, so they can trade food, get commodity, get resources, that they can govern for themselves. Okay. And then later on, that conflict continued with Julius Caesar. Okay, Julius Caesar was then in conflict with Hannibal Bay from Carthage. Right? They was trying to enter in on the trade in the Mediterranean with Crete. Alright, and Hannibal said no. Right? We'll take care of that and we'll supply you with everything that you need. And he didn't like that, so then they got into another conflict. Okay, that's how the conflict started back again. Okay, and then eventually there was an agreement, a treaty that was made, and the Europeans were allowed to do commerce and trade in certain regions in Kebalan and in Saudi Arabia. Okay, and then eventually you had the Europeans branching in, right, and branching into Spain and Europe and France and Germany, right, after Rome, right, with the Vandals and the Visigoths and stuff like that. And then what happened after that was the Moors from Europe then went up into Spain, right, and began to try to re-civilize or reincorporate the Europeans back into the fold under certain terms and conditions. And of course, some of the Visigoths was not trying to hear that at the time, but then there was some more conflict that was going on right there. And then eventually, they came to some sort of agreement. Okay. And after this agreement, they came up to this agreement, then they was like, alright, cool. Now, they was like, okay, now the Europeans have some say-so, but only in a certain area. And then that's when the Moors primarily was up into Spain and France and England and Germany. They was running Europe from about 700 to 1492. That 700-year period. Alright, the Europeans called it the Dark Ages, but it was really the Moorish Ages. It was the time when the Moors was running Europe. Alright, and the King of England was a Moor, King James and all of them, the Stuarts, the Irish, alright, the Picts, the Druids, they were all Moors. Alright, and then you had the Moors in France with King Louis and all of them, and then you had the Holy Roman Empire, right? In Germany, it was the Moors. Alright, then you had the Moors in Spain. So you had all of these Moors, you know what I'm saying? And then you had the Moors in Sicily, what you call it, Italy. So you had the Moors was running all of this stuff, right? And then what began to happen was that the European brothers and sisters, what happened was, as the Europeans begin to study the science, begin trained in the science, and they are beginning to want to do for themselves. Okay, and what happened was, how can I say? Some of the Moors was like, okay, we don't mind that, you know what I'm saying, but under certain terms and conditions. Okay, and some of the Europeans liked that, some of the Europeans didn't. So they was like, okay, so this is primarily when some Moors make agreements with some Europeans, right? You call them the Houses of Spain. You call it what's the name? The sister and the brothers from Spain. They married their houses together, and then they eventually asked the Moors in Spain to leave Spain, alright, and either leave Spain or convert to Christianity. So the Moors who did not want to convert to Christianity, they went back to Kebalan in Africa, and some of them went to America, some of them went to England, Germany, and Russia, but they had to get out of Spain and Portugal. Okay. And then some of the Moors who didn't want to leave just converted to Christianity, and then they were classified as Spaniards. Okay, it wasn't called Moors anymore. And then those Spaniards who converted, they are the ones who became the Spanish explorers. You see what I'm saying? Because that's what they was already doing. They're just not doing it on behalf of the church and on behalf of Spain. You see what I'm saying? So that's what's going on. So that's what happened. So you see 1492, that's when the Moors either converted to Christianity and began to become navigators and workers on behalf of the Europeans in Spain, or they went back and went to Africa, or went to America, or went to England, or some other place. Okay. This is what happened, okay? So it's very important to understand these truths, and very important to understand these truths, okay? and not to ever forget that. And then eventually, now we got 1492. Then 1492, then that's when you get Christopher Columbus, who was also a Moor, had permission from the Moors to travel to America. Okay, and of course they didn't even know America existed, but they heard Christopher Columbus, according to what I've heard in my research. Christopher Columbus heard a conversation about the Moors talking in Spanish about their brothers and sisters on the other side of the Atlantic, and he was interested in venturing out that way. And so, of course, Queen, not Elizabeth, but Queen, the Queen of Spain at the time, she did not want to fund the voyage. So it was the Moors who helped fund the voyage, and then that's the group of Moors who went to Cuba. Alright, well, Columbus. And they made a deal with the Moors in Mexico. Remember, they're not Mexicans, they're not Indians. They're just Indian is a term they use to explain people who are not, branches of the family who are not Europeans. Alright, not Asian. Alright, dark-skinned brothers just like me. Alright, conducting themselves in their own way. Alright, so they made a deal with their brothers and sisters in Cuba, and then eventually Cortez did the same thing in Mexico with Montezuma. Okay, and then eventually in 1500, 1600, there was treaties and agreements that was made that allowed the Europeans to do commerce above Florida. Okay, and ventured into the brothers and sisters you call now in Virginia, New York, Pennsylvania, Canada, and then Canada was primarily occupied by France, King Louis and them. Alright, so it's very important to understand how all of this stuff plays together and ties in together. Alright. Our European brothers and sisters are here under certain terms and conditions. They got here to establish a colony. Yes, they said religious freedom, because that's true. A lot of our brothers and sisters did, how can I say this? A lot of our brothers and sisters did venture here for the purpose of religious freedom. Alright, because when they were in Europe, England, Spain, France, they had to answer the Pope and the Church. So that to get from under that, they can be here and they can practice whatever they want. Because they wouldn't be under the thumb of the Church. Yes, they still have to follow the instructions because it's a colony from the Church. So you had the English colonies, so the 13 colonies. Then you had the British colonies, that was Canada, and a little bit of Louisiana, right? The middle portion, Mississippi River. Then you had the Spanish colonies of Cuba and Mexico, all right? So these are the colonies. Colonies are corporations, businesses, joint stock corporations. So they established these businesses, okay? And through all of the treaty agreements that was made with the Moors, they was allowed to conduct commerce and trade here in America, okay? And it's very important to understand the whole true story, okay? And not just take what is being handed to what's being disseminated in the schools and the churches. Alright, because that's false information. That's not the truth. Okay? There are no documents anywhere that proves that the Europeans ventured here and there was nobody here and they ventured here on their own free will and they established a nation. They did not, and I understand why they say that, because they would like people to look at it like that. But the truth is, that is not what happened, family. That is not what happened at all. Okay? Our European brothers and sisters was ventured here under the permission. The church gave them permission. Then King James signed the Charter of Virginia. Right? And then you had the king and queen of Spain at the time, who was also born, King Charles, Carlos Quintos. Alright? They were given permission to do commerce and trade in the islands. You call it the West Indies, Cuba, and then later on in Mexico, Brazil, things like that. And then you had the French colonies from France, King Louis and them. They were also given permission, alright, to come into America and to, establish themselves, establish a corporation in Canada and on the Mississippi River. Okay, they were given permission by them, but once they got here, they had to get permission from us, the Moors here in America. Okay, they had permission from them to travel. Alright, but the thing that is not being included is understanding the fact that the Moors were given permission by the Europeans were given permission by the Moors from Africa to travel the seas, because the Europeans just could not get on a boat from England and travel to America. They didn't have no authority to do that. They had no permission to do that. They didn't have no knowledge of how to do that. So the Moors in England, and primarily the Moors in Africa, Morocco, Tunis, Algiers, Tripoli, who gave the European brothers and sisters permission to travel the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean to travel to America. Okay, and then once they got to America, there was an order put in place by the Moors here of where they can live and how we do business here based on principles, our system that we have in place here. Okay, and this is lined out in the book of diplomatic relations with the United States and the Barbary powers, or the Barbary conflicts. And that is what you call the Moors, not the Arabs, but the Moors who was, occupying Morocco, Tunis, Algiers, and Tripoli. That's what all those treaties are. Alright, Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Morocco, Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Tripoli, Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Tunis, Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Algiers. But they can, with England and Spain and Ireland and France, right? So they can travel. Alright, and without that permission, many Europeans were being seized, their ships were being seized and brought back to Africa, and a market was then opened up where Europeans would be, either they'll sit there and work at the market, or they'll be transported to somewhere else where they would continue to work out, right? Until proper funds was there where they can then be returned back or be sent back to Europe or America. And this was the system that was in place. Okay? They completely neglect that whole, they don't tell people about what happened in the Barbary conflict, because that would put the pieces together when the Moors was like, more falsely called blacks and Indians and Africans. They said, how we get in this situation? And I'm like, well, it's the treaties. Okay, we signed treaties with our European brothers and sisters that allow them to do commerce and trade. So it's basically all based on genetics. Are you an Aboriginal to America? Because you have treaties here too. Whether it's the Treaty of Lenape, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Seminole, Abenaki, Wabanaki, right? But the treaty from the Moors in Africa, where you got Morocco, Tunis, Tripoli, Algiers, right? So what branch of the family are you with? Or are you Moors from Europe? Now the Moors in Europe, King George, who was in France and Germany, right? You gotta understand that, alright? They were Moors, but what happened was the King of England and the King of France and in Spain and in Germany, they were all removed from their seats of authority, and then Europeans put themselves in that position because how they were treating the European brothers and sisters. Alright, you had the English Revolution, you had the French Revolution, Spanish Revolution and the German Revolution. German Revolution was the Holy Roman Empire that got, dissolved, I guess you could say. All right, and all of this happened around the 1500s, 1600s. It really happened in the 1800s. That's when the changing of the seats took place. All right, the same with over here. But in England, you could say 1500, 1600. France, you could say, 1600, 1700. Same thing with Italy. Same thing with Spain. All right. It's around this time, this is where the transition was being taken place with Napoleon and all of that. All right, because the Moors were eating good and living good, but some of the Moors weren't always treating the Europeans with equality and respect either. So the Europeans revolted, all right, and pulled them out their seats and then put themselves in their seats, but they kept their names. And then they made up fake gene charts, genealogy charts that said they're attached to the family when they really weren't, right? Like Queen Elizabeth, she's not really the Queen of England because her line doesn't come from England. The line of England are the Irish or the Stuarts. Her line comes from Germany. So her line came from King George, who was in Germany. So what happened, how Queen Elizabeth got in that seat is when the English Revolution happened. The Stuarts were then removed from that seat. And they said, okay, the only place you can't be a Catholic and hold this seat, you gotta be Protestant. So they removed the Stuarts from that seat. And then brought in a cousin or a nephew, a family member from Germany, and brought him into England. That's King George. And then he was on the seat. And then he held that title. All right? And then from King George, then you had Queen Charlotte. She was also immortal. And then from that line, then you go all the way down, and you eventually get to Queen Elizabeth. All right? So it's very important to understand all of this truth, what really happened, what's really going on, all right, and how the Europeans got in the position they're in here in America. All right, this is just a brief summary. I'll go into details later. This is just a brief summary of everything that happened and why it happened the way that it happened. Islam. So it's very important to understand this. And then when they got here, the Europeans were taught and trained by the Moors here, falsely called Indians, what you call Atlanta, Lenape, or Delaware, or Iroquois, all Moors, right? And when they got here, then we created the Constitution where the Europeans could do commerce and trade with. Because before that, they had no representation without taxation. They had no representation in Parliament, so they could not speak. They had to just do whatever it was told. All right, whether it be a plantation owner all the way down to the plantation worker, it didn't matter. They had to do what they were told to do, how they were told to do it. Okay, and that way its function didn't go nowhere. And all right, some people say slavery doesn't exist anymore. Well, slavery didn't ever exist. But it is what you call indentured servitude is still in place, because that's what the business is. It's all about indentured servitude or involuntary servitude. Okay, that's still in place. That didn't change. It just got reorganized in the 1800s. All right, Jefferson and the Barbary Conflict, 1803. Louisiana Purchase, 1803. Right, the Treaty of Paris, 1787. Then they began to branch beyond the Rocky Mountains. I'm sorry, not the Rocky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, into Ohio, into West Virginia, Tennessee, all these areas. But they really didn't have no authority to do it. But they did it anyway, and treaties were made as they were going along, right? Then And when you had Lincoln in office, Lincoln was trying to bring the Union together. You know what I'm saying? But some European brothers and sisters wasn't with it. They was like, hey, I got my own thing going on. I'm not trying to be a part of that. So they seceded. They stepped away from it. And Lincoln tried to force it back together. And that's what the civil conflict was. All right. And then out of that civil conflict, then that's when you get the infiltration. Because this is a republic, not a democracy. Okay, that's why we see the Pledge of Allegiance. We say to the republic through which to stand, not to the democracy to which to stand. A democracy was brought in 1865, 1871, right? And then Washington, D.C., right, got incorporated, right? And then you have the Reconstruction, where they was creating this false history, right, to be disseminated. And then that's when you have 1903, the Rockefeller education system, where the system was going to be disseminated into the schools. And then they had the bankruptcy in 1913, 1923, 1928. And now they're doing functioning 100% on credit now. Credit cards, where everyone's pre-approved already. We just need you to use it. It's based on people using it. If no one uses it, then automatically it goes away because there's no value. See what I'm saying? As I understand this truth, and it's very important for our brothers and sisters to understand it, and not to get upset when they see their European brothers and sisters do what they do. They don't want to do it, and they don't like to do it. But it's, you know, it's this order, it's this system that's in place, and we're trying to help them through this system. All right, work through it. Work with principles, with peace, with government. Okay? Remember, the government is the Moors. The European brothers and sisters are not the government. They don't have a nation, they have a corporation that functions with a governmental platform, but is not a government. Alright, the European brothers and sisters are not the government. The Moors are the government. Okay, and it's the Moors' job to uphold it. And that's why the European brothers and sisters can lie and cheat and steal, and they don't have to. Some of them are not necessarily upholding the oath because they don't have to. It's not mandatory for them, but it's mandatory for us to do it because we created it. We gotta uphold this oath. It's our responsibility to uphold this oath. Okay, so it's very important to understand that. Try to get a lot out there. Alright, it's been about 30 minutes again, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this part up. This is probably part 2 or like portion part 3. So I'm gonna continue on with this story. Next time we'll get it more detailed later. I wish the family the best. Alright. Peace and love as always, family. Peace and love.